Season 4, Episode 2 of Black Mirror, ArkAngel, directed by Jodie Foster, that's right, from starring as Clarice in Silence of the Lambs to the very uncomfortable performance of Iris in Taxi Driver. You could say Jodie Foster has done it all, but you may not know she has directed a few things, and she seems to really enjoy it. After this, in 2020, she directed an episode of Tales from the Loop, 2 episodes of Orange is the New Black in 2014, Little Man Tate, and an episode of Tales from the Dark Side that we covered. Do not open this box. I have gotten a taste of her directing, and it's very non-flashy, very traditional. Jodie Foster was born in 1962, has been in movies for 5 decades, so this does make sense. And this was just like her episode of Tales from the Dark Side. No flashy visual effects, a more emotionally driven story, this time about a mother who's trying to protect her daughter, and an episode that's a conversation starter over whether parents these days are watching over their kids too closely. Are they being helicopter parents? The episode starts with the mother Marie, who's played by Rosemary DeWitt, who was recently in Smile 2 as Elizabeth, and the voice of Ellen in 16 episodes of Pantheon, and she's taking her young daughter, Sarah, to the park. And already it's setting the scene that this is going to be a slow episode. She starts talking with another parent, then she looks around and finds that Sarah is missing. She does eventually find her, but this leads her to seeking out a new technology from ArkAngel. And this is the best part of the episode. It's doing what Black Mirror does best, setting things in the near future. Like you could see how this technology would come about next 20 years or so. She gets a tablet, and she's able to implant something in her daughter Sarah's brain that cannot be removed, like a Neuralink, that will track Sarah's exact location, will monitor her health and stress levels and cortisone levels, so if it gets elevated, she gets this tablet that tells her when this happens. And in really creepy fashion, she can see and hear everything that Sarah sees and hears. She just hits a button on the tablet, and all of a sudden she gets an HD screen that is just like looking through the eyes of her daughter. So when she goes to steal cookies, she can just hit the tablet and go, she's eating cookies, isn't she? And also, interestingly, it has a content filter. I think this is the more head-scratching parts of this. So far, it makes sense. Okay. She can track her location, just like a GPS, so she can always see where she is. She can see from her daughter Sarah's eyes, so she can see and hear everything she experiences. But the content filter is a bit mind-numbing. So basically, if Sarah sees some violence, it'll blur it. But it doesn't blur very much of it. You would think they would just blur the entire screen. Painfully obvious what's happening. If she sees someone get punched, it'll blur the part where the fist goes into the person's face. And then the blood that comes out will still be red, but it'll be pixelated. But it's only blurred on his face. So you still obviously know what happened. It's not even like the old school TV channels that comedians would make jokes about in the 90s, where you flip to a channel, it's all scrambled. It's supposed to be like the porn channels. That, they scramble everything. So you can occasionally see something, but for the most part not. Here, they just blur a very small part. So, I don't know. I always laughed when she had the content thing on, because it's obvious this guy's getting punched or shot at. This content blur is doing nothing. But she has the option to turn that on or off. And during this episode, she waffles back and forth on whether she wants her daughter Sarah to see violence or even something slightly intimidating like a dog barking. She walks to school and there's a dog barking at her, and it censors the dog and turns the bark into a more pleasurable sound. The dog starts singing Taylor Swift. Okay, not exactly, but starts playing some nice music. So this is very interesting and very Black Mirror-ish technology, because the rest of this episode is really a drama. We see this girl, Sarah, grow up. Half the episode, she's a little kid around 10 years old, and then it flashes forward to when she's 15. She's hanging out with the bad boys and doing drugs and having sex, which her mother does see through the tablet. A very traumatizing experience. So while this is nowhere close to my favorite episode, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. It is very fair and balanced on how it handles this concept of helicopter parenting. Because everyone would see why a parent would want to do this, especially with a 10-year-old. You don't ever want them to get lost. You don't want anything bad to really happen to them. But it's also making the point that sometimes you do have to see violence. For example, this content filter that she has on Sarah when she's 10 years old filters out even a part where one of their relatives has a heart attack. And so she doesn't know he's having a heart attack, even though, once again, the content filter, he falls to the ground. Obviously something's going on. He doesn't hear him crying out. She doesn't end up calling the ambulance. And while the relative does end up living, this could have gone really poorly. Like sometimes if someone's freaking out, you have to actually know what's going on. But at the same time, it's impossible for this kid to ever truly be kidnapped or lost. So it takes a very fair and balanced view of this and really doesn't seem to push you one way or the other. Like, was it wrong for her to put this implant into her daughter's head? Personally, I don't think so. But it is definitely kind of creepy. And imagine if your parents, when you were a teenager, saw everything that you saw. Your first kiss, your first date, those wild parties. Like, that would drive anyone crazy. And you do have to let people live their lives without micromanaging every single part of it. When Sarah's 15 years old, she meets a bad boy by the name of Trick. Well, he's a drug dealer with a heart of gold. And her mother Marie sees Trick give her drugs, even though really she's the one begging for the Coca-Cola. He's reluctant to give it to her, but he does eventually give her a few sniffs. And even when they make love in the backseat of a car, her mother sees that as well, so she tells Trick to stay away from her daughter, and her daughter has a bit of a breakdown and gets mad at her. They get in a fight. It ends on an ominous scene where she ends up going hitchhiking. I'm glad they didn't have anyone die in this episode. There's some parts where it seems like the mother might be killed, or certainly the daughter as she's running out of this house. Thought might get hit by a car or something. So it's a decent enough ending. But for the high standards of this series, it's still going to stay at a 5. Because this is a very emotionally driven, down-to-earth story, I actually think it could have used a little bit of flashiness. Like, Jodie Foster's directing is so flat. Maybe take some of the budget from the USS Callister and at least see some, like, Requiem for a Dream flashback sequences or something. I also think the character of Sarah, when she's 15 years old, acts very immature and starts beating up her mother, which I don't think would actually happen, but she's 15, so I guess she's supposed to be the bad girl. Either way, this will reach a certain audience. I can certainly see someone who likes watching the mother-daughter dynamics enjoying this one more than I did. So it's going to stay at a 5. I think it's good, but not one I'm ever going to watch again. It stays right under an hour, so it doesn't overstay its welcome, because I can imagine if they tried to stretch this out to an hour and 30 minutes, it could possibly be a chore to get through. But sitting at 55 minutes, it's at the right length, and it's one that makes you think a little bit. Sarah is played by Brenna Harding, well, the 15-year-old Sarah. She was in Puberty Blues as Sue Knight in 17 episodes, and in one episode of The Narrow Road to the Deep North. Next up is Crocodile. And of course, you can see this series on Netflix. Check out our playlist for the other series that we've covered. We're doing every single episode of Black Mirror, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Twilight Zone, Mystery Science Theater 3000, and we started doing live streams where I, and other people, watch the Monster series. Thanks a lot.